All right, guys. First few minutes is gonna be boring because I got to play catch up. Everything messed up. I've got to totally start this all over again. So I'm going into my Facebook page and gonna post it up and get this thing going. All right, I posted it on my Facebook page. We'll just wait for people to pop up. Hey, Al.
Hey.
All right, we're live. I just went ahead and went live on it, but we'll wait till everybody else shows up. So,
All right.
boy, that was a fiasco. I don't know why it thought that I had already started it. So, good. All right, while everybody's jumping on, I'm gonna do some disaster control real quick, and see if I can fix all the problems that I just created. Oh.
Just wanted to see if my mic's working. Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right. Well, that may cause this one to be a small turnout, but we'll see. All right, we're streaming. Hey, Jeffrey, that's an awful sexy picture of you. Sorry, brother.
I try. I was born that way.
It's like a glamour shots, but it's not. I have to rag on you. Let's see.
The best love it.
Yeah.
Howdy.
Hey, yo. All right. I'm just, like I said, I'm just playing, I'm doing some disaster control real quick. This has been crazy. Let's see. We'll go there. Here. All right. All right.
That looks pretty good.
All right. Here we go. I'll wait till a few more people kick on. I got 16 viewers so far. I want to get rolling with not very many. Corey, how you been?
Good, thanks. How about you?
Oh, man, I've been busy. My wife is at a girls' camp deal. She's a camp nurse this week, so I've had the kids, and I've actually only had 2 of the 4. The other ones are at camp themselves. So it's Boy Scout camp week. This is the first scout camp that I've missed in 11 years.
Wow.
It's driving me crazy.
15 viewers so far.
Yeah, we got 19, so
Not very many.
yeah. They'll pop in. I posted up on Facebook.
Corey,
so
how you been? Good, thanks. How
that's
about
the
you?
first place they'll go.
Man, I've been
So.
busy. My wife girls can't deal. She's a camp nurse this week.
There's the echo.
Well, that's really delayed.
Yeah, somebody's just got a delayed feed. So we'll fix it. What happens is when people first log in and jump into the conversation, there's a big lag.
Tries to catch up.
Yeah, it eventually catches up. So. What stinks is it's recording all of this. I'm going to have to go back and edit it on Facebook when I'm all done. Cut this first part out. How many people we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're doing pretty good. So, good. All right. All right, let me do my intro for video stuff. All that crap that I have to do at the beginning. All right. Hey, everybody, this is Gene Jensen with BassResource.com. Today we're doing a live hangout, and I'm going to try to get as many people in as possible. Today's topic is going to start off with finesse fishing, which is a very broad topic, and I'm trying to keep them broad so we can, talk about the different ways people use baits for finesse fishing and things like that. But and then afterwards we'll just go into an open question and answer deal. So anyway, on here I got a good friend of mine, Mr. Al Bassett. He's a professional guide, rod builder, Lowrance guru. He's been fishing for years and years and years. I owe him more than anything in the world. He saved my tail a couple, 2 or 3 times. My boat broke down on the boat ramp once. My truck broke down on the boat ramp once, about a half a mile from his house, and he saved me then. So anyway, he's going to join in this conversation. He'll help me out because he has some finesse techniques, mainly jig heads, Al. That's what I'm thinking of. He has some finesse techniques that are really, really cool that I don't use, but he's very successful in. His son kicked my tail one day with a little tiny jig head. So anyway, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about anything you guys want to talk about. It's not just going to be me talking. It's going to be you guys sharing your experiences and asking questions. So anyway, let's get started. First of all, what is finesse fishing? Anybody, jump in. What do you think finesse fishing is?
Light tackle.
Light tackle, Chris?
Downsize tackle and slowing down the presentation.
Yep.
Yep.
Nasty, icky spinning rods.
I was waiting for that one. Yeah, the fairy ones. Yep, definitely. So finesse fishing is downsizing your tackle, not just your bait, but your weight and your line and your rod, and you've got to have the right rod to be able to handle that light line, stuff like that, and that's when your spinning rods come into play. I'm right along with a lot of other people. I don't particularly like using spinning rods. For me, I'm not very accurate with them. I can't hit a coffee cup, and it's just tough for me to hit the right spot. But when you're using light line, you really have to have a rod that can handle that. Now there are some medium action bait casters, and I've got one behind me that I use all the time for everything. But it's a good finesse rod for certain things, and we'll get into that. What are some of the what's the word I'm thinking of? Some of the myths about finesse fishing. Al, you know any myths about finesse fishing?
Well, one is what you just said. There's actually bait caster rod to be able to cast 6-pound test line on.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And 2 is a lot of people think you're only going to catch smaller fish, and that's not necessarily so. As long as you have a reel, whether it be spinning or bait caster, that has good quality line and a good drag system on it, you can land some very nice sized ones. Yep.
One of the first big fish I ever hooked into, I was fishing out of a little 10-foot John boat I borrowed from my father-in-law, fishing this little beaver lake is what I called it, on the back of Fort Gordon when I was stationed there. And I hooked into a fish and set the hook, and I saw the fish boil. I mean, it was huge. For me, it was huge. It could have been 8 pounds, but I thought it was 12. And it turned and ran, and my drag caught, and it snapped. And I was using a cheap Walmart Shimano spinning reel, and I went home that day and I told my wife I will never buy a low-value, cheap spinning reel again because of that, and I haven't since. And that's a key thing, is you got to have a spinning reel that has good drag, that can handle it, and it's not going to catch up and not going to cause you to lose big fish. My personal best of 9.98 in a tournament came off of finesse technique, mojo rig in the grass. I was using a little whippy fishing rod, 8-pound test fluorocarbon, little tiny hook, and 1/16 ounce weight, and and I caught a 9-pound bass. So yes, Al, you're right. It catches big fish. Another myth that I've heard is it's only for clear water. And personally, I've caught bass finesse fishing in muddy water, in dark stained water, like Al's home lake, the one he lives on is Oconee, and it's got dingy muddy water, and I won a tournament there throwing a shaky head, and you just got to make the adjustments, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on, and the adjustments you have to make to be able to be a successful finesse fisherman in all conditions, because yeah, it's a great technique for when fish are inactive. It's about the only way to catch fish when fish are inactive, or when they're cold, or when they're suspended, and things like that. So but if it catches fish, then it's going to catch fish when they're active and feeding too. You just have to be in the right spots. So let's start off the way I always like to start off a video. Let's start off with the tackles, specifically the rod, the reel, and the line. Rod actions and rod lengths are key. First of all, let's ask, what do you guys like to fish with your finesse, with your shaky heads? What's your good shaky head rod? What action and power?
I use a medium light 6.5 foot bait caster.
Okay, a medium light. Corey, I know you
I
finesse
use
fish.
medium light and a medium. I kind of trade back and forth spinning because I pretty much use all spinning.
Yep. Yep. Chris, I'm gonna throw you in the middle
the
of it.
fairy ones.
Chris, I'm gonna throw you in the middle of it.
I just use an ugly stick, 8-pound
Yeah.
fluorocarbon.
Yeah, and is it an ugly stick that's a glass rod?
It's half, I think.
It's a half and half, so it's probably a medium action, something like
Yeah,
that.
medium action.
Cool. I've got and I like a medium light rod for really light line when I'm using 2 and 4 pound test line, 6 pound test, and stuff like that. The reel size, I like to use a size 20 reel. What is a Shimano reel, Al, in size 20? What number is that? It's like anybody know? I can't remember. I don't know if Al uses Shimano's or not. Shimano has like it's set 2700 or something.
2500 maybe.
2500 it might be. So, but I use a size 20 reel, and then when I'm finesse fishing with like finesse jigs, I'll bump it up to a medium action rod, and I'll use a size 30 reel on a spinning rod, or I'll use a bait caster, my medium action bait caster. So you really have to, and we'll talk in a minute about how to match up line and line and rod with the bait that you're using. Let's see, fluorocarbon line for clear water is almost a must when they're turned off in that cold water, or when they're just not biting. I least like to tie on a fluorocarbon leader. That's just my recommendation. You guys know how much I love copolymer. If I'm fishing dingy water or stained water, I'm just going to throw copolymer because it's cheap and it works and it's abrasion resistant. So
All I use.
So is that all you use? Yeah. I mean, I can't speak enough about good copolymer line. I mean, it's the best of every world, except for when you're fishing that ultra clear water with when you really want to finesse them.
And I myself had never used fluorocarbon until I went to Table Rock Lake last summer, and
Yep.
you might as well stay home if you're not gonna put that on down there, because you're fishing water where you can see 40 feet down, and you're not going to get bit if you don't have that on. And we were there in first week in August,
Mhm.
and we were fishing in 60. We were doing drop shots at 60 foot of water. So I mean, that's tough fishing there.
How many tangles did you get with your spinning reel using fluorocarbon?
I didn't have a problem with it at all.
Yep. Let's talk about that. I actually have some notes written down about that. The biggest thing that people hate about spinning rods is the line twist. The tangles you get. You just have tons and tons of problems. There are certain things that you can do even from the time you put the line on to how you fish to reduce the amount of line twist you have. With a drop shot, you're going to get line twist. I mean, it's just going to happen, and you can get that out. But and fluorocarbon is really bad at having line twist show up earlier than just about anything else. One of the things I would do to reduce line twist in a drop shot is use braided line for your main line. I don't, but if I was fishing deep,
That's what we did.
yeah, and so it didn't really show up, that much for that braided line. The only problem I have with using braided line for drop shot that I'm dropping deep is I don't get a clean, fast drop. Every once in a while, your braid will catch up on that spool, and that drives me nuts. That's like running fingers on a chalkboard. It just drives me nuts when I want to drop it, pinpoint it right on the fish that I see in my fish finder, and it snags up halfway down on the spool. So sometimes I'll use it, sometimes I won't.
Also, another thing that I think that helped us is that we were using the new drop shot hooks that have the swivels on the top and the bottom.
Yeah.
So and we're only using like 10 feet of fluorocarbon anyway, because we were told that's all you really need for a leader. You don't need 40 yards of it.
Yeah. Exactly. Huh. So that's pretty cool. Now let's talk about putting line on the reel, okay? And I've got a video about how to put line on a spinner reel, but let me go through it let me give you an easy way to do it. You take your filler spool, okay? The first thing I would do, and now in my video I say take the spool off the reel after you put the line on and put it in hot water, but after I made that video, somebody gave me a really good idea, is to take the filler spool and put it in hot water. Instead of dunking your spool in the hot water and risking losing the oil and the grease that's in your spool, put the filler spool in hot water. And then when you're putting your line on your reel, make sure that the line is coming off the filler spool counterclockwise, because your spinner reel is putting it on the reel clockwise, and that'll reduce a little bit of line twist. Another thing that a lot of guys do, and I do, is I'll use a silicone-based line conditioner, or I really like KVD's line and lure. I'll spray that onto a rag and get the rag good and damp, and hold the rag around the line while I'm reeling it in and keeping tension on it. Or I'll spray it on the spool. It all depends on what I'm doing. But anyway, and then I put the line on the reel, and then I don't overfill the reel. When you overfill it, your biggest problem is that it it spins off, and then you have all kinds of problems with line twist. So how much line do you think you leave on the spool? The guy, or what I do is I don't fill it as an eighth of an inch or less. It's always between a quarter and an eighth of an inch left on the lip of the spool. Let's see if I can get my. So I got my ceiling fan up there, so if I hit this thing, it's going to be all gone. But you see, I leave about an eighth of an inch on that lip, or even a quarter of an inch, and this is fluorocarbon on here. And that's really what you want to do, is you want to leave that much on there, so it reduces the amount of problems you have, because when that stuff comes off the reel, it's going to give you the line twist that you hate. And then the third one is when you cast it. Don't, and this one doesn't have a line through it, don't do this. Let's see if I can do it. Don't click it down using the handle, and that's a huge thing. I mean, it will cause all kinds of line twist when you take it and you drop it down, and I can't do it because I've never done it, but and you use the handle to click it down. Always drop the bail with your hand, and always, before you make your cast, pull your line tight and make sure it's in the roller, okay? And once you pull it tight, you should be set. Now, how do you reduce line twist? How do you eliminate line twist? The only way I know to eliminate the problems with line twist is use braided line. And but over time, hundreds or thousands of casts and stuff like that, you're gonna get line twist.
So do you load your reel with the fluorocarbon if you're using fluorocarbon, or do you back it with mono or?
Being the cheap person that I am, if it's a deep spool or if it's not a shallow spool, I'm gonna back it with cheap mono or something. You know, the less the best. Unless I'm going to be fishing deep. Now this is summertime. I'm gonna fill the whole stinking spool because I don't know if I'm going to be fishing 20 feet or 60 feet deep. And I don't want any chance of that not showing
That's
up.
where I was confused. We were told, we were fishing 60 foot deep, and we were told to put like 10 foot on or whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of didn't sound right to me, but it worked. I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, yeah. My biggest thing is I just like to save money any way I can. So I can get 3 or maybe 4 spool refills out of a standard 200-foot fluorocarbon filler spool just by putting backing on there. So that's what I try to do. I try to $20 a spool, man. I can't afford that if I'm going to refill all the time. Another thing is I really pay attention to the conditioning of the line. Here's where I differ from the industry. The industry wants you to buy as much line as you can, replace it every month, or replace it after every tournament, everything else. I don't. If that line isn't all kinked up from backlashes or line twists and stuff like that, I'll keep it on for a year. Or the worst thing you can do though is leave it in your car, leave your rods in your car, and get them hot, and cause that line to break down, or leave them out in the sun too long and cause the line to break down. But what I love to do is and what I'll do every year is I just replace it once a year. I've got the same filler spool. I bought a 1 pound spool of 15-pound Iser line 5 years ago, and I'm still pulling line off of it and still using it. And because I only replace it once a year, or when the line starts to feel like it really needs to be replaced. So, and I don't lose that many fish. The only time I lose fish is when I screw up and don't retie at the beginning of each day. I'll use the same lure I tied on yesterday, and I'll go and set the hook and snap. I'll lose a fish. That's my own fault. Anyway, back to finesse fishing. What are some of the baits that you use finesse fishing?
Robo worm
Robo worm. Why?
has a lot of action.
Yeah.
I can also use it in like more weedy situations. You just have to. You flip the worm. I got it off some kid off YouTube, and it really works whenever you're on laydowns or something. But you can also use it as an exposed hook. Get some really good hookup ratios, but it has a lot of action.
Yep, using an exposed hook. You know why I like a robo worm is because it is neutrally buoyant. It's got just one salt layer down at the bottom, and it's the best drop shot worm. I don't promote them or anything else, but when you're using a drop shot, you get it down there, and a worm like a finesse worm or a trick worm, over 10-second period or so, it'll droop down, and a mojo or a what were we just talking about? A robo worm sticks straight out because of that salt that's on the bottom layer, and it was made for drop shot, and it's a great shaky head worm because it floats up a little bit better than the other ones,
Yeah,
So
I also use Power Team lures, Finicky Tickler, and 3.6 JP Hammer Shad. Those work really well.
yeah. So what other ones? Finesse worm by Zoom. A little finesse jig. This is an Eakins little finesse jig, light wire hook. Let me get a little closer to the camera. Light wire hook, and of course it's not gonna. There it is. And just a little 16th ounce or a little 1/8 ounce jig head.
I started out about a dozen years ago fishing the slider worms and on the slider hooks and still fish those a lot, but I also throw it's not a brand new bait, but my other favorite bait is the newer the bottom hopper from in the Havoc line from Berkeley.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a stand up. Tail will float up, and works really good on a shaky head or any other stand up type jig worm. It's a great jig worm.
Yeah.
See those Eakins jigs around here. I've never been a fan of spinning rods ever since someone handed my first bait caster.
Mm-hmm.
Around here, I live in Arkansas, and I mean we've got beaver, gooseberry, all kinds of these clear lakes, and those Eakins jigs are probably one of my main finesse jigs. But I throw them on a bait caster on a 12-pound fluorocarbon.
Oh, okay.
And then And then when I am throwing a spinning rod around here, everybody they call it gets around here, but everybody throws a tube. I mean, just about everybody. If they're especially on Goose Ferry and the really clear lakes, they're real big fans of tubes around there. On like a tube jig head, like 1/8 or 3/16 of an ounce.
Yeah. You guys are wondering what's going on with the sound. I'm having a frame rate problem right now, and I don't know how to fix it. It'll fix itself here in just a minute. So
Now,
everybody's
speaking
sound.
about finesse jigs, when would you choose a finesse jig over like a Texas rigged like Rage Crawl or something like that instead of putting it as a trailer?
I tend to use finesse jigs in the wintertime. Just because, believe it or not, crawfish are a little bit more active when the water's cold than most people think. I was fishing dead of the winter. What were we? I was filming a video with Mike Buca, the float and fly video, but we caught a spotted bass that had 3 crawfish hanging out of its mouth.
Dang.
And it was a good one. I think it was probably about a 3.5, 4-pound spotted bass. But those crawfish weren't hibernating. I mean, they were down there getting eaten, and so I just tend to think that bass in the wintertime don't want a really big meal, because 9 times out of 10 they catch something, they hold it in their mouth. If they're not feeding actively, they hold it in their mouth and wait until it's time to eat, and then they just swallow. Mainly because if they have too much in their stomach and their metabolism is really slow, they don't digest it very fast, and it'll rot and eventually, cause I want to say sepsis, but eventually they'll die if they have too much in their stomach in the wintertime. So that gets into all the whole biology of it. But yeah, I use a Eakins or a small jig in the wintertime. With a small jig trailer. My favorite jig trailer is a little baby Rage Crawl in the wintertime. Just a tiny, tiny little thing that's got enough action to when it's falling and things like that. Small crankbaits. We're going to get into a really cool trick here in a minute that I do with small crankbaits. A lot of times, even in deep water. Let me go through drop shot, the split shot rig, the Mojo rig, shaky head, things like that. A lot of soft plastics I tend to do. If my best friend's watching right now, I've had my best friend Adam for 20 years. I bet you he's laughing, because all I was ever known for was my finesse fishing, because I was a finesse fisherman up until about 5 years ago, and I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to learn how to power fish now, and I put all my finesse stuff down. But I love drop shot. I love a Mojo rig and a shaky head. Put a shaky head in my hand, and I kind of consider it cheating now, because if I really need to get a bite, I'm gonna throw a shaky head. Let's see, rod, reel, line. I'm going down all my stuff. Other rods, I'll use a medium heavy rod when I'm skipping docks with braided line, with like a weightless Cinco or a weightless trick worm, something or something with a little bit more weight that I can skip up underneath docks. Use a medium heavy with a finesse jig head, but I'm still only going to use about 10-pound line, maybe 10 or 12-pound line, and just back off on my drag and make sure I don't break the line on the hook set. The one thing you got to consider with a finesse jig is you see that hook. Let me see if I can get my camera to focus. You see that light wire hook. If you have too heavy a line, or if you're using a braided line on a hook set, on a nice powerful jig hook set, you're going to bend that hook out. So you've got to consider that. You got to say, okay, I'm using a light wire hook, whether it be a Texas rig or a jig head. I'm using a light wire hook, and I'm using 10-pound line. So do I really want to use a medium heavy rod with my drag set a little bit tight? You don't really want to, because you're going to set that hook. It's going to bend the hook out. You're going to lose the fish. Break that line off.
Have you looked into those War Eagle heavy hooks?
I don't even know. I haven't seen them.
Yeah, War Eagle came out. It's supposed to be Andy Morgan's pro model jig.
Mm-hmm.
But War Eagle came out with a finesse jig that's got a 3/0 Gamakatsu Superline hook on it.
Huh.
Round bend, heavy finesse jig hook.
You'd have to use braided line with that to get a hook set.
Like I said, I throw my finesse jigs on a bait caster on 15-pound fluorocarbon.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, that's the biggest thing is a lot of people make a mistake, and I do it too. I'll get lazy and I'll say, okay, I'm just going to throw this hook on this line, and all of a sudden I'm missing fish. The fish aren't. I'm not getting penetration because my jig head's too thick, stuff like that. But yeah, if you're finessing with that, that's fine. Like I said, finesse fishing is it's a broad topic. Let's see. Let's talk about drop shot. A lot of people think that that a drop shot is just meant to be thrown out and dropped directly into the boat, a vertical presentation. And if that's the only way you're fishing it, you're missing out on a lot of really good bites and a lot of really nice ways to fish it. One of the ways I'll do it is if I'm not dropping directly into the boat and if I'm fishing any kind of cover, I'm going to change out that octopus hook or that mosquito hook with a light wired offset worm hook, so I can Texas rig it, so I can make it weedless. And I'm going to pitch it into that cover, and I'm going to pitch it into the grass, and I'm going to throw it up and use it like a Carolina rig and drag it along. Anybody else ever done that?
I did after I watched your video on it.
Do what now?
I did after I watched your video on it.
Yeah, I mean it's a great way to catch fish. Another thing people do is they'll put a jig head at the bottom as a weight. I'm not fishing a tournament, a BASS tournament. I want to catch fish, so I'm going to have a jig down at the bottom, and I don't ever put an octopus hook on there if I've got a jig on the bottom. Reason being is that if you set the hook on an octopus hook or on a mosquito hook, if you set it hard, you're going to miss the fish 9 times out of 10. So if I've got a jig on the bottom and an octopus hook above it, I don't know if the fish has bit the jig or the drop shot or the worm. So I'm going to set the hook like it's a jig, and I'm going to miss it if it's on top. So I'm going to Texas rig it with an offset worm hook that takes a little bit more of a hook set, and I'm going to set the hook up just like I would a jig. So either way, I catch the fish, and I don't risk missing it. So
I don't a light wire shaky head, so it's kind of like the same hook set, whether it was a exposed hook or if it was the shaky head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Rather than putting a big jig on the bottom.
Yep. Yeah, and that brings up another thing is people, a lot of new guys don't really consider the fact that hold on, let me get a hook out, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But not that hook. Here we go. They don't really consider the amount of power it takes to get that hook through that plastic and then into the bass. So you see people when you Texas rig a soft plastic like this. Now this is a light wire hook, but you see people just start reeling, and you're never going to get your hook set in. You're not going to get it's just going to be tough to get that hook set in. So anytime I'm Texas rigging a bait, I'm going to set the hook. I'm going to full on try to rip their mouth out, so I make sure I get a really good penetration through that, out of that plastic, and into that fish. So let's see. So drop shot. You can throw it out. You can pitch it into cover. It's all about how you rig it. You can use that heavier line like Chris was using. Texas rig it on a heavier hook and throw it into some really thick cover, and you can sit there and shake it in front of a bass's nose and drive him absolutely nuts until he bites it. That's one of the things I do when the water's murky. Everybody talks about finesse being in clear water. Well, when it's murky, what does a bass do? Here's one of the things people don't realize, that when you have murky or muddy water, bass pull in really tight to cover. And when I say really tight, if a bass has his eye covered with a stick like this, he feels safe. He has to be able to see that thing. So he's sitting right here because that's as far as he can see is 1 inch. And a stump, same thing. He's going to be sitting right there on that stump, and that's where he feels safe. Same thing with a dock post or anything, brush. When it gets muddy, they pull in tight to that cover. I love muddy water fishing because I know where the fish are. If I can see a stump sticking out of the water, I'm going to pitch to that stump 100 times because I know there's a fish on it. Another thing you do is you use darker colors. With a clear water, I'm using clear baits. I'm using watermelon. I'm using sometimes green pumpkin. It's not clear, but I'm using really bait fish looking clear baits. And with muddy water, I'm using dark colors, black, and black. I'm not
Black and red,
maybe a
pretty good.
purple, but I'm going to be using black.
We use red and black combos a lot up here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do too.
Dark colors, and when you throw it in, you got to make that good, that really good cast into to the very 1 inch or a half an inch off of that dock post, and let it fall straight down, and then let it sit there, because you just passed a bass on the way down, and you got to wait for him. If you're not getting bit, you got to wait for him to get down there and look at it and suck it in. A lot of times, just let it fall down, let it sit there. I caught I was fishing in this little bitty farm pond, and me and my buddy had drugged this little plastic 10-foot, what do they call those things? The little
Crawdad.
yeah, the little twin hole bass boats. We
Yeah.
drug it a half a mile into this pond, and put it in this lake. And this is when I learned this whole technique. It was a muddy lake, but you could see just barely under the surface. You could see the top of stumps, and it was only at the deepest spot 5 feet deep maybe, and it was only about a 5-acre lake. But I took that jig, and when I was first getting started with jigs, I threw it up next to the stump, let it drop down, and then I was doing something. I just kind of let it sit there, and I was doing something, and 15-20 seconds later, thump, I got a bite, and I set the hook. And so I said, let's try that again. So I went to the next stump, caught a fish. Went to the next stump, caught a fish. But it was 15-20 seconds before I got bit. They were lethargic. They just wanted to come down and just stare at it and then suck it in. And same thing with soft plastics. But when it's muddy water, they get really tight into that cover. And the muddier it is, the tighter they're going to get. I'm going to drop a name. Danny Brower, what does he do when he goes to a lake he's never been to before? He goes and finds the muddiest junk that he can, or the thickest cover that he can, that's going to reduce their visibility, that's going to cause them to get close to that cover, and he's going to go try to pitch it. So anybody got any questions before I keep going?
I got a question.
Yeah.
When would you use a ribbon tail worm versus a straight tail worm?
I've actually gotten away from using a ribbon tail, but if I'm using a ribbon tail, I want something with action, so I'm not going to, and a little bit of vibration, so I'm going to use it in kind of dingier stained water, or
I had muddy water, and I was just I had a black with it was like blue flake. It was a culprit worm, and it was a ribbon tail, and I slayed them at this reservoir. It was just a muddy reservoir.
You'd be amazed how much
I
vibration.
love them in dirty water, man.
So I only had 10 to a pack, and I went through all 10 because I was using laser trocar hooks, which were basically like one bait to a fish, because the trocar hooks were just ripping the plastic up. So I ran out of those, and then I went to the Zoom straight tail worms, and I caught like one fish after like an hour and a half.
Yep, it was all about that action, and it may have been rate of fall. That's something we haven't covered with finesse fishing, but it's the trocar hooks, guys. I'm telling you, I tried them out. I've got a 10 or 12 of them, and I tried them out for the first time this spring, flipping and pitching like you're supposed to do with them, and I'll tell you, like what Doug said was, you tear up baits with them. I'm an X-ray tech at a trauma center, and I spend a lot of times in the OR. And the trocar hook is what we use to penetrate the really tough skin or the tough tendons and stuff when they're stitching people back up. And I found with the trocar hooks that they're selling now, they flat tear up a bait. You're good for about 50 casts or one fish, maybe two fish.
Yep.
And so I immediately went back, and I'm glad I had some flipping hooks that weren't trocars. I went back to those and fished them. I hate it, but they're great hooks. They get great hook, great penetration when you get bit, but they tear up a bait.
Now, if you're not gonna use a trocar, what kind of hook would you use? What kind of hook brand do you use?
You know what I really like, and I don't have enough of, is I like the owner hooks. It just all depends. It depends on what type of hook. I've got Gamakatsus, I got VMCs, I've got owners. I like the ones that are laser sharpened.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to get myself into sharpening my own hooks to see if I can make them any sharper. So then I don't just throw them away when they get dull or get a tip bent out of them. I start sharpening them and saving a little bit more money. I don't make a whole lot of money doing what I'm doing. So, and with 4 kids and a house payment, it's got X-ray tech is what pays the bills. But let's see. I did find it. Well, we're talking about finesse fishing, but just whatever's got anything but a trocar. See, that's a trocar. But is the ones that just have the round point. A cutting point's a good point, but it's still going to tear up a bait a little bit faster. So anyway, rate of fall. Let's go into rate of fall. One of my favorite ways to catch a suspended fish, and when the fish are inactive and suspended, especially spotted bass and smallmouth, but largemouth will suspend in really in tough conditions, post-front conditions, is I go with a very, very lightweight, a Texas rig, literally a sinker in front of the hook. A Texas rig with a 16th ounce or an 1/8 ounce weight, and a small hook, and I'll throw whatever kind of a worm I want on there. Sometimes I'll use a rage craw or something like that to slow down the fall. But I'm going to play around with the rate of fall. I'm going to play around with that weight. But the key to this technique is you've got to use a spinning rod because you've got to get a vertical fall. You throw into wherever you think the fish are suspended. They like to suspend off a point, so they'll suspend over a creek channel in a small pond. But you throw it out there and you let it fall on the slack line. And what happens is that weight, that bullet sinker, falls away from your hook. Okay, so what it looks like is you got that bullet sinker falling down. Now this is, I'll use it all the way to dingy water because the bass can't see it other than that. But and it looks like your worm is chasing something. So it's that instinct that a bass has to join in on the fun. You got a worm falling, you got a sinker falling, and the bass sees both of them, and it looks like that worm is chasing that bait. And I'm gonna try to figure out what my rate of fall is, and I'm gonna count it down. Say my rate of fall is 1 foot a second, and I need it to fall 15 feet. So I'm going to count 15 seconds, and I'm going to stop it with my finger. I'm not going to flip the bail. I'm going to stop it with my finger, and I'm going to let that worm catch up with that sinker. Okay, and then I'm going to shake it and see if I feel a bite, I'm going to flip that bail and set the hook. If I don't feel a bite, I'm going to let it fall, and that worm is now caught up with that sinker, and it's going to fall like this. It's going to fall in a spiral all the way down to the bottom. And if you've caught the attention of a bass that's suspended, it'll follow it down to the bottom. And when it reaches to the bottom, you shake it again. And you don't want to shake it to where you're moving it. You want to shake it on a slack line or a semi-slack line and get it to shake. And that bass that's followed all the way down, it just expended a whole lot of energy. He's going to bite it 9 times out of 10 times. So that's a really cool way of catching suspended fish. The other way is with crankbaits, just cranking it through the middle of the school until you turn the school on. But if you're trying to finesse them, light line, spinning rod, let it fall on a slack line, and the key is don't trip your bail on when you get it down to your depth of your fish. Just stop it and shake it. Okay. So what it looks like is that fish caught up with whatever it was chasing, which is the sinker, and now it's trying to eat it, and it's not big enough, and the bass wants to join in. So anyway, anybody ever heard of that?
I think, did you do a video on that, or was it?
No, I haven't done a video on that.
Maybe I saw a KVD video about that or something.
There might be one about there. I'm sure there's other people that use that idea.
I still haven't got the try it, but it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's not mine. I read it like in a Bassmaster magazine years ago, so I don't lay claim to that. Another thing I do is I love a Carolina rig when I'm finesse fishing. All I do is I'll just change out I'll go, instead of using the Carolina keepers like I do all the time, I'll go to a swivel and put a really light leader on, and put it on a medium action bait caster, and then I'll small hook, small baits, and just a French fry.
How big a sinker are you using?
It all depends on depth for me when I'm fishing a Carolina rig. Okay. I'll go 1/4 ounce if I'm fishing fairly shallow, 10, 12, 15 feet. If I get any deeper than that, I'm going to want something heavier just to get it down to the bottom because I'm impatient, and then I just have to keep in mind I don't want to just if I set the hook too hard, I might break the line out. So I want to kind of play around with my hook sets and just kind of be careful with them.
Because that's the only thing I've ever fished the Carolina with. I haven't had much success with it, and I bought a pack of the 3/4 ounce weights, and really the waters that I fish for the most part, they're not that deep. Probably 12 foot's the deepest water that I'm fished in. So maybe I'm using too heavy of. Can you use just a regular bullet sinker then?
Oh yeah, that's all I ever used to use.
Okay. You don't have to have a brass.
No. It's see, everybody wants you to think inside the box. Stay outside that box and fish. I used bullet weights for years because those little egg sinkers or those little barrel sinkers that they use all the time.
Right.
They would always get hung up in the flooded timber of one of the lakes I was learning to fish it in. I'm like, wait a minute, there's got to be a better way. And so I started using bullet sinkers, and it came right through.
That's good to know then.
And, other things you can put on there is glass beads or plastic beads or two beads to make it click a little bit better.
I used the beads, but I think I was using way too heavy of a sinker where I'm fishing though. So
I'm gonna pull a sinker out real quick.
I'll have to try that then, because you primarily stick to like a 6-inch type, or do you even go down to the 4-inch for that even?
Yeah. I don't like a real long leader with Carolina rigs.
Well, I mean size.
Oh, I will use a 4-inch French fry. You know what a French fry worm is?
Right.
Those old. If you know what a Charlie Brewer slider rig is, you know what a French fry is.
Right.
But the French fries are great Carolina rig baits.
Okay.
A lot of people have seen where one of my favorite Carolina rig baits is a Cinco. I'll throw a 4-inch Cinco on there, just like a French fry, but it has a little different fall, and I don't wacky rig it. I Texas rig it. But this is my favorite Carolina rig weight. Okay, this was marketed. Actually, it wasn't marketed, but it was brought out by the True Tungsten Company, and it's called the Finesse Carolina rig weight. Why, I don't know, because they make it all the way up to 3/4 ounce. But it comes through everything, and it's kind of like a Mojo weight, but it's made out of tungsten. And if I could ever get a tungsten company to make me some of these, I would promote the living snot out of them, because I bought every one I could find on the internet when True Tungsten went out of business, and can't find them anymore, and I'm running out. So if anybody's watching, please make them. But anyway, but I also, for backup, I have some lead Mojo weights for a Carolina rig, and I love the long cylindrical ones because they come through the cover real easy. Okay. And so you can downsize. Anybody ever put a crankbait on a Carolina rig? I was challenged years ago. I was challenged on Bass Resource. We were doing some crazy challenge where we'd take turns giving something crazy for somebody to do. And somebody challenged me to catch a fish on a Carolina rigged crankbait, and I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? And so I went out and I got a balsa wood crankbait. Actually, it was made out of basswood, but anyway, a wood crankbait, one that floated up.
A floated one, yeah.
Yeah, and I put it on a little bit longer leader because I worried about it getting caught on the bottom. And I chunked that sucker out there. I caught 15 fish that day, in about 20 feet of water. It was about between 15 and 25 feet of water, just dragging a dang Carolina rigged crankbait. And
that's a pretty good idea, actually.
That's a wonderful finesse technique, because when they are turned off, it's something they've never seen before, but you use a really small crankbait like square bill or something that can get down there. And I got thunderstorm coming in. I got a really small crankbait, and you can get it down there, and they're more willing to bite that small crankbait than a big one. A little square bill, something that doesn't die very fast, or a shallow runner, one of the weight baits, get it down there. You never know. Like I said, I love thinking outside the box. So that was a cool challenge that I did, and I'd still do it to this day. As I'll get out there. Last year I was fishing a hump out in about 30 feet of water, and the fish were right there. There was no cover on this hump. Well, they had no reason to be on there, but I went over them with my fish finder, and I saw them, and I was like, those are located on the hump like they're bass. The only problem is they were moving around this hump. They weren't staying in one spot because they didn't have anything to hold on except for that hump. So I threw a Carolina rig on that crankbait on that Carolina rig and threw it out there, and I think I pulled 3 out of that school. It was kind of a cool little deal. So just something different. Shaky head. How many of us finesse fish with a shaky head?
Dude, I love it.
Yeah. How many of us power fish with a shaky head? Yeah, I do them, but I do it both. But let's talk about a shaky head technique. Light 1/8 ounce, slow fall when you're want something that's going to fall slow when they're suspended. But if they're sitting on the bottom and they're not active, you want something that'll get down there and so you can keep it on the bottom. So you just kind of have to play around with it. You get that little jig head dropping down there and see what happens. Hold on, guys. I got to do something over here on my control panel to fix things and move things around, so I'm going to lose my concentration.
They didn't call it shaky heads back then, but I first started fishing. I think it was Al Linder. I had one of his video old VHS tapes, and he was showing how that was his search bait.
Oh, really?
He hooked a like a 1/8 ounce jig on a 6-inch worm, and that was his search bait on fishing on a new lake. He had 3 things that he had tied on, and that's what he led with in almost all cases, and that's when I first started using a jig head like that.
Yeah. Yep.
Of course, now they've got them, with the bigger hooks, and the.
Yep.
I like that. It took me a while to get used to that because I had to steer myself away from my spider or my slider hooks.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm going to ask you if you're not and I'm not faulting you at this at all, but I want to let other people join in. If you're kind of hanging out and not in the conversation, kind of let somebody else join in that's got questions or anything else. Pop out and pop back in. I don't know how many people are watching. I've got 57 people watching right now, so I don't know how many people.
I'll jump out.
Okay.
And let somebody. So.
All right. Thanks, Corey. Good talking to you.
Yep.
But I want to let some other people in and let them jump in. Okay. Let's see. I talked about the Finesse Texas rig. Mojo rig, my favorite one, my personal best. The one that I caught my 9.98 on, and my friends rag me. You guys, I'm used to it. I mean, they've been ragging me since '06 when I caught the dang thing that I missed my double-digit bass by 2/100ths of an ounce. And but it was in a tournament, so I won some money on it. But but they still won't give me that 2/100ths of an ounce to call it a double digit, and I don't mind that because one day I'll catch one. I've stopped targeting big, going to those lakes that have big bass and lots of big bass in them. One of these days I'll catch a double digit, and hopefully it's on video and I'll go crazy. Anyway, so a Mojo rig, small hook, a number 1 offset worm hook. Anywhere from a finesse worm, I find that a straight tail worm works a whole lot better than anything else, and that's my own personal deal. I'm pretty sure curl tail worm will work, and I've caught them on a lizard and a Mojo worm, Mojo rig. But 16th ounce weight is the heaviest I use, and it comes through everything. It's the best grass rig for submerged grass that I've ever used. Mainly because when you get grass hung in on it, just 2 little shakes and the grass falls right off, and you just keep on fishing it so you don't mess up a cast. So let's see. Anybody got any questions about a Mojo rig? Because I know I talk about it all the time, but I don't ever explain too much about it.
I got
what it looks like.
Those sinkers that you were showing a while ago.
The sinkers, there's actually a weight company called the Mojo Weight Company, MOJO, and you can get it from them. I actually pour my own. You go to the Do It Mold Company, DO-IT Mold Company, and they make a mold that's called the Lure Body Mold. Same body, same weight that they use on an inline spinner like a rooster tail, and I mold my own because those are a little bit narrower than the Mojo rigs and they come through the grass a little bit better. But I use it all the time, so I've made my money back for that, and I bought the mold used on eBay years and years ago.
Because that's the only way my wife fishes is Carolina rig. I mean, she fishes with lizards.
Yeah. So one of these
been working with me because I'm not a bottom fisherman. I don't fish the bottom, and she is very good at it. And
And she whacked your tail every time, and yeah, you
She
need
is
to
very
start bottom
good.
fishing.
I cannot bottom fish at all.
Yeah, Paul.
That would be something I would like to get. I'd like to get into some of them for
Yep.
her.
Yep. But it's the Mojo Weight Company, and one of these days when I've got time, or maybe I can get another company and start making them. I don't know. I'd love to start making them and selling them, but I just right now with all the things going on in my life, there's no way I'd be able to. I'd make them and I'd forget to ship them, and I'd have somebody's money and get people mad at me. So it's just one of those things I just don't have time for. That's why I stopped selling jigs, because I would forget to ship them to people, and I felt so bad. And I was like, you know what? I just need to stop doing this until I get the time to do it again.
You
But
still being a scoutmaster?
do what now?
You still being a scoutmaster?
Oh yeah, actually, I'm a cub master now. I'm running a cub pack.
So do you still make your own jigs?
Yep, I make my own.
You still hand tie 'em? Because I remember I actually make my own jigs as well.
Yep.
And I remember learning how to hand tie 'em with the wire from you.
Yep. Yeah, I still make my own. I make a batch every spring, and they last me all year, and sometimes more than that. So.
Same. I do the same thing. It's awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
teaching us that.
Yeah, man, I do it my own way. There's other people that do
Yeah.
it. I sit there and watch the guys at Greenfish Tackle who used to be the pro staff for Buckeye Lures. They used to tie all the mop jigs.
Okay, yep.
In the early days, you got the mop jigs you bought were tied by the pro staff, and
Yeah.
so until they have people like in Mexico or somewhere tying them. I don't know now.
I like
But,
the mop jigs. Mop jigs.
Yeah, but the Greenfish Tackle guys, they're hand tying them. They started their own bait company, and it's fun watching them do it because they do it totally different than what I do. So.
That's
But
cool.
anyway.
About a slow fall rate earlier.
Do what?
You were talking about a slow fall rate earlier. Do you ever
Yeah.
throw tubes?
You ever throw what?
Like a 3-inch tube?
I don't throw tubes. I fished a tube once on Kentucky Lake for a full day, and I caught fish on it. But the reason I don't like them, and I didn't have it Texas rigged. I had it rigged with the tube hook with the weight inside of it and everything else. I couldn't feel the bottom, that drives me nuts, not being able to feel what type of a cover I'm on, or feel that I'm bumping into something. So I don't like fishing it. Now I've got a ton of tubes, and I plan on pitching and flipping more with a Texas rig and flipping it like you would a regular creature bait, just to use those tubes up. But no, I don't.
Most of the guys I've seen around here doing it are all old heads that have all their brush piles marked, and they're using it for a drop bait, kind of like get it in on the fall type deal.
Yeah, because it spirals down when it falls.
Yeah.
So you get that really cool action. Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of people beating people in tournaments on tubes. It's just.
Especially out here, clear water.
Yeah. So.
I've seen a lot of guys use it as like a backup bait. Like they'll throw a crankbait in or something like that, or they'll throw like a topwater popper, and once it gets hit and they miss it or something, they'll throw a tube and let that tube just fall down. That kind of mimics that bait that just got whacked.
Yep, that's a good point, and it's totally off of finesse fishing. I'm pretty much done with my notes anyway. But is a follow-up bait, especially when you're fishing like a top water and stuff like that. Back when I was fishing pot tournaments on Wednesday night, one of the things we do is my tournament. One guy would be throwing a buzz bait, and the other guy would just stand there with a weightless trick worm or a fluke or something in his hand.
Yeah.
And that buzz bait would, fish would come by and miss it, and we'd immediately throw right where the fish missed and catch it. And so always have a follow-up bait, especially when you're fishing topwater.
Perfect, yeah.
We'll do that with a Senko.
Yeah.
I love throwing a weightless Senko, a Texas weightless Senko, and it just falls down like a.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially when you're throwing topwater, always have that sucker locked and loaded, laying on the deck or right next to you, ready to throw it. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to catch it on that topwater on the next cast.
Correct.
You'd be lucky if you did. But if you take that something else and throw it at it, you already fired that fish up. He's going to bite the next thing that comes by that doesn't look like what he just missed.
Yep.
So, yeah, great way to catch fish.
Fishing a night tournament last Tuesday night, and we had a brim come up and it bit the back hook of our spook.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 4 foot from the boat, and he was about to pull his spook up out of the water. And bass rolled up on it and tried to eat the bluegill. Pulled it out of the water.
Oh man, yeah, that's enough to make you want to change your pants.
Exactly.
Man, that's crazy, especially if it's a big bass. Oh, so
Gene.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems I have probably drop shotting or shaky heading is speed. Now, Aaron Martins is famous for his drop shotting techniques, but covering water with it effectively and fast is kind of tough.
Yep, and you know what? And I teach this in my shaky head. A shaky head, a drop shot are not meant and are horrible for covering water.
Okay. Yeah.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to locate those fish before I try to catch them, and before I try to finesse fish them. So I'm either going to use my electronics. I know a lot of you guys at Bankfish don't have electronics, so I'm going to use a reaction style bait to try to figure out where the fish are. I may not get bit, but I might see a fish following it, or I might see a fish swinging at it, you know, and missing it or whatever. And I'm going to try to locate those fish with other baits that move a little bit faster. A small spinner
Rattle
bait,
trap.
yeah, rattle trap, something like that, something that they're going to swing at out of reaction, and then you're going to go in and follow it, you know. And another thing that brings up, Matt, is a shaky head or a drop shot is a good mop up bait. You know, say you've caught them to death on a dang crankbait or some type of a power bait. Well, you can turn back around and you can throw in something finesse type and catch a few more out of that school, you know, and mop up that school with something.
Maybe even the bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, especially the bigger ones, yeah.
Yeah, I do that. Going from a crankbait with rattles down to a silent crankbait.
Yeah, yeah.
Back.
When you guys talk about drop shotting, I've drop shotted a lot last year, and I haven't got to so much this year. When you guys drop shot, I use the round weights on the bottom, and when I try to cover water with that, I feel like I get snagged quite a bit. Is there a different shape that you guys like the tube shapes or whatever? I think you were talking about earlier. Do them not get snagged up as much, or you know, what do you guys use?
Let's talk about that for a second.
Because I hear a lot of guys that cover water with drop shotting, and I've seen it and I've tried it, but I just get snagged up when I'm covering water on the weight.
Okay, now what are you getting snagged in? Rocks or sticks or everything?
Yeah, a little bit of lay down, some rocks, but a lot of sticks. Yeah, a lot of lay down and stuff.
If I'm getting, I don't ever use the round ones.
Okay.
And the reason is because they get hung up a lot. Okay. They make these little bell sinker ones.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can get this thing to focus right.
I can see it perfect. Yep,
you get that bell sinker one going.
Okay.
And then this is the other one I use.
That's the ones I was thinking that.
Okay. I'm going to tell you when I won't use this one. I won't use this one when I'm fishing silty bottoms. And the reason being is when it's laying on the bottom like this and you're shaking it, it's popping up and down like this. It's stirring up that silt.
Okay.
And that's getting the attention of the bass. You don't want the bass to have attention to your weight.
They want it up at the.
Yeah, you want them to look up at the hook that's up top. So, you know, but I use this in rocks. I use it in timber. I use this one in timber. I like this one because it stays on the bottom better and it doesn't stir up silt. So I'm going to use it when it's on a silty bottom.
Okay.
You know. But I'm going to punch this one through grass, all kinds of stuff.
Where did you get that one at?
This one?
Yeah.
You can buy them anywhere. I make them, but you can find them anywhere. You know, I love do it molds, and that was just one of the little hobbies that I got into years ago. You don't save any money by doing it, but you know, I like to be able to go out and say, okay, I want this one, so I just go make a small batch. But you can find these at Tackle Warehouse. I've seen them, and they make them out of tungsten. I don't know why you would want to spend that much money on a weight that's probably going to break off in the rocks anyway. But anyway,
have you ever tried? You earlier were saying something about putting jig heads on the bottom of a drop shot.
Yeah, that was
putting a football head with like a crawl on the bottom or something.
Yeah. I use usually when I'm doing it, I'm going to use a finesse, something with a light wire hook. So you know, if I'm going to use a football head, I'm going to make sure it's a light wire football head, shaky head.
Yeah, a small one.
Yeah. I've got my shaky heads around here somewhere.
I just like how football heads come through cover.
Yep.
So I thought maybe that'd be.
Yep.
Cover or rocks, you know.
I've never actually heard of that. The guy, when you guys were talking about that earlier, that's a genius idea. When you're drop shotting or whatever, you have your finesse set up or a Cinco up top, and I like using instead of a drop shot hook, use an offset hook. But yeah, then throw a jig at the bottom, so it's you got your weight on the bottom, but you're also working a jig on the bottom.
Yep.
It's genius. I never
I'm gonna
actually
try
thought of
that.
that, and I'm gonna
Yep.
try that.
Yeah, just make sure that you use similar, like I said, Texas rig your hook or Texas rig your worm up here with an offset worm hook, so you can use the same type of a hook set that
Yeah,
you would with either one
because
of them.
obviously if you're
Yep.
power setting a drop shot hook, it's
Yeah.
not gonna kick out.
Yep.
Just yeah.
Yeah, and when I'm guiding and I'm teaching people how to drop shot, and you see them, they feel a bite, and they're like this, they're setting the hook, and I'm like, don't set the hook.
Yeah, just lift up.
Yeah, because you're gonna miss the fish. But another cool thing that I didn't mention, another Carolina rig finesse type deal, is why not use a finesse jig as your weight on a Carolina rig? Anybody ever thought about that? I've never done it.
I've never thought of that either.
But when I was taking notes, I got
How would you try that on?
I would tie a Palomar knot on the finesse jig with a long tag end.
Oh,
is what I
okay,
do.
yeah.
And I'd use 10 or 12, maybe 15-pound line, but I'd probably 12-pound line. But anyway, tie a finesse area or a Palomar knot with a long tag end, and then tie a light wire hook with a small bait
man,
on
it's
right
like a
behind.
something floating. It looked like it was chasing it, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So one of those Elastic, those Z-Man baits that float. And it looks like it's
your
flowing along.
crankbait idea.
Yeah, or the crankbait. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it, but who knows?
That would be awesome.
I'd love to hear stories from guys catching something on that. But what
That'd be cool.
You never know. And yeah, you may get it hung up and lose the whole dang thing. But
that's real.
There's a lot there.
It's worth a try.
5 o'clock in the morning going fishing, so I'll try it.
Yeah, there you go, Paul.
Yeah, I'm going fishing tomorrow morning too. I think I might try that drop shot technique.
Yep, yeah, and a lot of people do that, and I do it every once in a while, but usually when I'm drop shotting these days, I'm fishing structure and I'm keeping an eye under my depth finder, and I want a half-ounce drop or 3/4 ounce drop shot weight so I can drop something right down on the fish that I see in my fish finder. But anyway, split shot rig. Just like a Mojo rig. Now, a Mojo rig, and I didn't explain this well enough, is a finesse Carolina rig, basically. Little bitty weight, pegged 6-8, maybe 10 inches above your hook. And you're dragging it and you're working it just like a Carolina rig.
Yeah. I totally forgot what that was.
Yeah, your hook set is still a sweeping side hook set, just like you would a Carolina rig, and stuff like that. So that just made me think maybe.
I do that a lot and never knew the name for it.
Yeah, and so a split shot rig is the same thing. You just pinch a split shot up above it,
So I don't do the Mojo, I guess. I do the split shots.
You do the split shot, and it's the same deal. I just a
Grandpa
Mojo
taught me that.
with that shape weight, it tends to come through the grass, especially milfoil. It comes through it a whole lot easier. But a split shot rig, I would use it in hydrilla. I'd use it, in the bare bottom and everything else. It's just a quick way to tie something on, pinch the weight on, and go. So, but same.
Gene, how much weight do you throw on that split shot rig?
I'll throw maybe a 1/16 of an ounce at max.
Okay.
Is what I would do. I know a lot of people that throw heavier than that in deeper water, and it may work that way, but I've just never done it, so I don't have any experience with it.
So it's just keeping it up off the grass.
Yeah,
above the grass line.
It's like Carolina rigging on top of the grass. It stays on top of the grass, and when it gets a little bit hung in it, you just drop to a slack line and pop your rod tip a little bit, and that grass will come right off of that weight and right off of the worm. As long as the worm is a pointed head worm and not like the flat end of a Cinco. If I was gonna
that'll slip through pretty easy.
Yeah, if I was gonna Mojo rig a Cinco, I would actually hook it backwards, where the tip end, the pointy end is on the.
Good deal. I like it.
I actually got a hold of some. I think they're 16th ounce bullet pinch weights from Walmart, and I love them things.
I actually think
that was weird.
Yeah, you lagged
Oh, he
out.
dropped.
Yeah, he dropped out. You all right?
Yeah, I dropped like a rock. I didn't have to do anything. It kind of kicked back in. So.
Oh, that's cool.
That was strange. All
I
right.
knew right away that you lagged out.
And I'm not getting any warnings over on my control bar, so that's weird. So, how was the sound when that happened? Pretty good?
Nothing. You just froze. Yeah,
It
everything.
just went, okay, good. Well, at least it didn't kill me. But anyway, so you take it and you just you just work it on top of that grass. When I caught my personal best, I was throwing 8-pound test fluorocarbon, number one offset worm hook, teeny tiny little offset worm hook with a trick worm, and a 16th ounce weight, and the grass edge. There was a grass edge and then a creek or a little ditch. It wasn't really a creek; it was a ditch that ran up along that grass edge. And I was casting from shallow water to deep water into that ditch, and I brought it up to the edge of that grass and shook it, and just got it hung just on the top of that grass, shook it, and all of a sudden it just started swimming off, and I set the hook.
Yeah.
And thank the Lord for a good net man, because that fish tore up half an acre of grass with that 8-pound line, and I tried to jumped twice and trying to get him to the boat, and Ryan had my big net in the boat, so we scooped him up, but I could have easily lost him, and the hook actually was hooked in the gills or backside of the gills. Wasn't bleeding, but just kind of hooked in the backside of the gills, so it never penetrated any skin. So I could have easily lost that fish. But anyway, the biggest thing with any kind of rig that's got the weight above the hook is you got to side sweep it. You just want to try to keep that line as straight as you can between the hook and your rod. So a side sweep is always what you want to do to get a good positive hook set. And
I do have a question, Gene.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I would worry about pinning it or putting it with a split shot on there is damaging the line.
Yep. And
another thing to cover is guys checking their knots all the time when we're using light line.
Oh yeah, good point, Matt. Yeah, when I use a split shot, I will use you've got the removable ones that have the little teeth on the inside and stuff like that. I don't use those. I like the old round ones that just have the flat groove. You put your line. If I'm going to use one, I'm going to use it and then just pinch it on with my pliers so it does the least amount of damage as it can. But if I'm fishing 6-pound line or 4-pound line, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be as careful as I can. And that is a key thing, is check your line all the time. I'd lost I don't know how big it was. It was a nice fish anyway, 2 weeks ago, because I wasn't checking my line. And it broke an inch above the knot about, you could tell that it wasn't at the knot, it was above the knot. And you just got to check. Once you catch a fish or two, run your finger along the first 4 feet in the line, check it, check your knot, retie. I hate those stupid swivels, those snap swivels that you see a lot of newbies using, a lot of guys that are just getting started. And if one of you guys are using them, I'm sorry, I hate them, because they make you lazy. They make you to where you don't retie enough. Because you can just clip on a new bait and go back to fishing.
You just put new baits on instantly. Yep.
Yeah, they made me where I change baits too much.
Yep, exactly. And I'll use those little duo lock snaps when I'm changing out crankbaits, trying to figure out what color they want and what depth they want and stuff like that. But as soon as I get bit, I'm cutting that thing off and tying directly to the bait once I figure out what.
I feel like the snap swivel is only legit when you're crankbaiting. I don't think it's necessary on the other rig.
Yeah. Well, you got to be careful though. Use the little clips.
Oh, he's lagging out again. He'll come back, I think.
He said he had a thunderstorm coming in earlier.
Yeah, we'll see.
How do you lag out of your own hangout and everyone else is connected?
I don't know.
I don't know how that works.
There he goes. Watch him get kicked.
Someone else took his spot.
No.
Got kicked out of his own spot.
Hey, here, I'm fixing to head out of this, so Gene can get back in.
Right on.
He's not even going to be able to get back into his own thing. He's probably at his computer just like, what the heck?
But Doug, those are some nice window blinds.
Oh, no.
Too many people keep joining, he can't get in.
Can't even get in his own hangout.
He's gonna start a new one.
Does anyone else got anything to say? He's out.
What were we talking about? He was talking about those little
Another
snap
decorator.
swivels.
Yeah, he's talking about don't use them unless you're crankbaiting, which I agree.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
My very first.
I don't even remember the last time I used a snap swivel, to be honest. If I'm tying a swivel on, I always use a barrel swivel.
Yeah, I haven't used one for ages since I was little.
Yeah.
Jake's in
Too
the
little
house. Jake, you got in as Gene got kicked out.
Yeah, those snap swivels, I used to use those when I was trout fishing and stuff.
I used them back when I would catfish with my grandpa and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, catfishing.
People fall like they have a leader in the hook. You can just switch out the leaders.
Yep. He'll probably just start a new one, honestly.
Yeah, he's probably gonna start a new league. We'll be over here on our own little deal.
You guys use a lot of fluorocarbon?
Oh, that's all I use. I don't even.
like fluorocarbon leaders really is all I use it for, but
I use fluoro 24/7.
I'm a
I use it unless I'm doing top water.
Yeah, except when I'm using frogs, I'll use braid, of course, the frogging and flipping FX2 Sunline. But yeah, fluorocarbon.
I ain't got a
all
lot of money, so I just back it with braid and then fluorocarbon leader. And I ain't got too many pulls. I only got like 2 or 3. So if I'm if I'm fishing frog like you just said, I'll just cut the leader off and fish a frog.
How did you make that Clint Eastwood avatar?
Oh, I don't remember. I think I just searched for it, and then I think they let you add images, so I just downloaded it, and then
I got you. Okay, that's pretty cool.
yeah, you can put filters on it, like film effect or whatever. I don't have a camera, so I had to make something cool.
And I don't mind that because one day I bullet pinch weights from Walmart. I don't even remember the last time I used a snap swivel.
Well,
Gene didn't make it back on.
No, I think it's.
I think somebody needs to drop out so he can get back in.
Well, I don't even think it's that because
somebody drops out, somebody else is gonna jump in.
if you go to his YouTube,
Cart's full.
but if you go to his YouTube though, it's the video pause, like it totally the video is ended. So
I think he
I'm
might
guessing
have actually.
He
I'm
can't
guessing-
unless he makes a new one.
Yeah.
Because his Facebook hasn't updated or nothing either.
He have to make a brand new link.
Yeah, he's probably gonna start a new one.
Yeah, then everybody's gonna join in, and then we're gonna have to sit and wait again.
So Dylan, do you like the Lose reels?
Yes, they're my favorite actually.
I just started about a few months ago. I love them.
Yeah, they're my favorite. The Lose BB1 is probably my favorite so far. I got that one on my Froggin setup, and then I just have the Lose speed spools, just the regular speed spools, on my jig setup and my spinnerbait setups and stuff.
Yeah, I have the Lose tournament speed spools. I was thinking about the BB1 or whatever about that, but
The tournament
spinning reels good?
are legit.
I'm gonna start using on my gate rods.